We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about Seiko watches. That's right, watches made by Seiko. Here's the thing. I get asked questions and comments all the time about Seiko watches, and while I'm very familiar with Grand Seiko watches, I just haven't had a lot of Seiko watches in my personal collection. Now, I am going to be saying something nuanced about Seiko watches, and it's something that I was shocked because I was actually looking at the Captain Willard, as Joe Rogan episode I just released. He had a Seiko on his wrist. It kind of inspired me, maybe I should actually spend a little bit of time and throw a Seiko in the collection. I started looking through the specs and I saw one spec or specification of the watch that shocked me, and it was the accuracy. Now, hold on, I am going to talk about it, but I do have to say that on the wrist today, I am wearing a Seiko Prospects, and this watch actually we just got in. We have available at delraywatch.com, where occasionally we will take a Seiko in on trade, and if we don't, it's probably because it's a little bit older and our service center just doesn't work on Seiko for a couple of reasons. But actually, I'm really liking this. But what did shock me is the timekeeping and the accuracy. Now, let me preface what I'm going to say about the timekeeping and the accuracy. I am going to be saying some things that may not be great for those of you that really, really love Seiko. But this is the facts. This is coming straight from the Seiko website, and I know there are going to be people out there that will say, oh, well, I have a time grapher and I keep the time on my Seiko and it doesn't keep those specs. It keeps way better. Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, there's chronometer rated watches out there that don't necessarily keep chronometer rated specs. So it can go both ways. But let me just kind of say, when we talk about chronometers, we're generally talking about COSC certified chronometers. The movements are set, or sometimes, the watches are kept for chronometer rating in a -4 + 6 seconds per day. So for a watch to be chronometer, COSC certified, actually certified, it can keep chronometer specs but not have the certificate. The watch needs to be a new watch, and it needs to be -4 + 6 seconds per day actually off for the correct time. Now, there are other standards that brands like Omega have come out with, METAS certified, and there's some other standards that other brands have come out with, mostly because they just don't want to work with these third parties that they don't have a lot of leverage or control over, and this increases delays for production. And right now with Swiss watches, especially everything with COVID, that's a big deal. So you have different certifications from different companies, but the general guideline is that these other certifications are better than COSC. So Omega METAS is going to be better, and it's going to have more testing time. I mean, COSC certified, I believe, is a 10-day range. So, it needs to keep the standard for 10 days. Past that, it probably will keep it, but that's what they look at. And some of the other brands or ratings go for more than 10 days. So now that we have that out of the way, that's generally what people are looking for, especially when it comes to sports watches. We think divers, we think Seiko divers, we think watches that are made to be worn around, beat 'em up, rough and tumble, kind of even everyday wear, right? People like to go out and move, and they want to keep accurate time, especially for everyday wear. Maybe you don't have a huge watch collection to rotate, and timekeeping is super important. So once again, I was on the Seiko website, I was going through, and I knew that's in the back of my head that a lot of Seiko models, especially when we're talking about automatic, we're going to be talking about the automatic movements here. We're not going to be talking about the quartz, which is going to be way more accurate, of course. And we're not going to be talking about the spring drive, which is going to be regulated in a similar fashion. We're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the automatic, standard mechanical movements here, or even the non-standard, a little bit more sophisticated movements that Seiko's offering. I'm going to give some examples here with the timekeeping. Let me get into it. I noticed that there are a lot of these watches on the Seiko website that just don't have timekeeping standards at all. And so you just kind of have to assume, okay, it's going to be keeping really great time, right? Especially when you get into that 100, much more now. They've kind of gone up in price. But let's talk about that $300 to $500, $600, $700 watch. You go on the Seiko website, they just don't have timekeeping standards. Fine. A lot of brands are really not putting that out there. If the watch is not chronometer, a lot of people just kind of assume it's going to come shipped chronometer or pretty close to that within that -4 + 6. But then you start looking at the $1,000 plus Seiko lists their timekeeping, and you kind of think, okay, well, maybe it's going to be closer chronometer, but that's not the case. I mean, we look at a $1,300 Seiko prospects. So they're professional line. We're not talking Seiko 5. We're not talking a watch that you're going to walk into a Dillard's or a Kohl's or a Macy's and walk out the door with. This is a $1,300 watch that rivals, you know, the Hamiltons, the Tissot's, things like that. And the SPB085 and the 239. So this is going to be their 1960s and 1970s, 1965 and 1970, I believe, are the years. Vintage inspired watch is professional line plus 25 negative 15 seconds per day. Now this really does blow my mind because that's 13 minutes per month and 2.5 hours roughly per year. Now, of course, this is a range of timekeeping, but let's say that you saved up, you bought your $1,300, $1,500, $1,600 with tax, depending on where you live. You get it. You notice that it's plus 25 seconds per day, that 2.5 hours per year. You call up Seiko, you submit an inquiry on their form, you tell them about this, or you send it to them. They can easily just send it back or say that's within spec. Now, okay, maybe that's just one watch, right? You know, some people, they don't mind that, but I know that a lot of people do really mind the timekeeping, especially when you start talking about, you know, getting into this kind of money. At a couple $100, it can maybe be excusable because to regulate a watch within timekeeping standards, not only can the movement needs to be able to handle it mechanically, but the watchmakers that work on it have to be watchmakers and not just a watch assembler. When you get into a few $100 watches, a lot of times, you know, you're not getting someone like we have, like Hans, who has worked for the big brands and really knows how to adjust the watch in all positions to get it within those specs, things you would see at Kosk, at Matos. But when you start getting at $1,300, you really do have to kind of think, well, is that something that should come with it? So let's look at another one, the SPB213, just another one that I clicked on, plus 25 minus 15. Very much the same specs. Moving on, you have the SPB207. This is the same rating, the plus 25 minus 15. Bumping the price point up to $2,500, $2,500 US dollars before sales tax. Okay. Maybe they're offering better timekeeping standards at this price. No, they aren't. It's plus 25 minus 15. Now, I don't want to sound too negative because keep in mind, at the end of the video, I'm going to be providing some really great examples for about $1,000 that you can get a Kosk certified. Some of these actually come with a Kosk certificate, which a lot of brands don't even ship that anymore. So stay around to the end of the video because I'm going to give you some pretty great options if you are looking for that chronometer or chronometer, not even chronometer quality timekeeping, actually Kosk chronometer watches. But going on to this $2,500 price point, the SPB085, not there at all. Now, Seiko does have another accuracy rating in the Presage as well as the Prospects lineup. I completely ignored the Seiko 5. They don't have timekeeping standards there. I'm sure that the service center has some type of standard, but it's not in any of their literature I could find. So I did kind of ignore the Seiko 5, which is the more approachable entry-level gateway to the Seiko family. But looking at the plus 15, negative 10 accuracy rating they have on their website for $6,800, we're talking Rolex Submariner pricing here. We're talking very fine watches. We're talking more than we sell brand new Omega Seamaster ceramic bezel watches for from Seiko. Plus 15, minus 10, SLA 039. I actually love the design of this watch a whole lot. You know, talking about whether or not I would purchase it at that price point, I don't think so. Not even a timekeeping thing. It's just you start getting into, you know, watches that I just personally like a little bit more. But the timekeeping standard is just not there. It's not a chronometer. They don't guarantee chronometer specs, and you're looking at heavy duty, serious, hard hitting watch prices. Rolling on at $2,900 on a boon strap, I like this design a whole lot. An SJE085, plus 15, minus 10, $2,900. So you can get that type of timekeeping at plus 15, minus 10, but you're spending $2,900. So about the same price as a used current or previous generation Seamaster and so many other countless watches in that price point that you can get keeping much better spec. And lastly, we have the SLA 049, $3,100, plus 15, minus 10. Now, just to recap, the lower price point watches under $1,000 that Seiko is offering, I didn't see any accuracy ratings there. I have gone on the forums. I've talked to other people that have had accuracy issues with the watches, as well as we have a service center, and it really is hit and miss. There are a lot of people that do have really great timekeeping on their Seiko watches. In fact, until I saw the timekeeping standards on their website, and by the way, I've been on their website before, of course, but I previously have not seen the timekeeping standards, so I don't know if maybe they're updating their website. Once again, Grand Seiko is a little bit different, and some of these watches are Grand Seiko territory, by the way, which for me, it would be a no-brainer just to jump up to the Grand Seiko. But I'm really curious because, like I said, we have the service center. People call in all the time. We don't handle Seiko because it's a parts thing. It's a time thing. Generally speaking, it's a watch where the time that it would take to repair the watch far outweighs the current market value. So people, when we originally started working on Seiko, we were willing to do it, and it just wasn't worth it to do that for many people. Not even considering sustainability and all of that. So we don't handle it. And there's people that do specialize in Seiko, but we hear all the time, maybe people just want their watch maintained or oiled or serviced, you name it, and it keeps really great time. There's people in the comments almost certainly that are going to say, my Seiko keeps, plus 1 second per day or something like that. And to them, I say, that's amazing. That's great. And, I don't really have the data. I mean, not really. I certainly factually don't have the data from Seiko, what the comeback rate is, what percentage of their watches do they know that are not keeping certain standards. But I just think it's very interesting that they go out of their way on these watches that I consider to be getting into real collector grade Swiss brand name watches from a brand that's kind of been known for its affordability. The prices are creeping up and the accuracy standards, or at least the perceived accuracy standards, seem to be going down. Now, I don't want to necessarily paint Seiko in a negative light because I think they do a lot of great things, and I think they do some things very well. In fact, as I'm wearing this Seiko watch on my wrist, by the way, this is not an inexpensive Seiko, but it just feels really great. Something I love about this is actually, it's kind of funny, but aside from the case, aside from the actual watch, I just love this strap. It has so many holes in this strap. Let me count this. There's probably 25 holes in this strap. I know I'm talking about the strap and not the actual watch, but it's a component of the watch, right? This could probably be worn by a 2-inch wrist or a 12-inch wrist. There's so many holes in this strap, and the buckle is pretty nice. There's a lot of edges on that. I mean, I get it. I'm talking about the strap. So once again, I don't want to paint this too negatively because I think Seiko overall, for the amount of watches they produce, probably has really great accuracy in terms of the number of watches that come back is probably low. And I think most people are probably set in stone. It's just, you have to keep in mind that if you're the type of person that gets the watch and for whatever reason, you just need to have it. Maybe you're a sportsman, maybe you're a diver, either take your Seiko watch and do the timekeeping yourself, send the watch off perhaps to someone that specializes in Seiko watches that can regulate it in multiple positions, 4, 6, or more positions, or, spring for a watch that's going to give you better timekeeping accuracy. Maybe the spring drive, maybe the quartz is better for you. If you're a Seiko fan, you like their designs. Personally, I like a lot of their designs. I think this particular watch that I have right here, I think the case construction is really great. It's just this accuracy for the price point creeping up and the accuracy seemingly going down. I don't know. That rubs me kind of the wrong way. But, don't let me... I'm not here to try to necessarily persuade you to love or hate Seiko. I'm kind of on the fence for certain components. Like I said, I could easily add one to my collection because the timekeeping standards is not the biggest thing for my personal life because I swap watches in and out. So I can overlook that. But once again, some people can't. So I just want to share that with you, not, trying to come after the brand or anything like that. And I'm certainly not ever trying to persuade anyone to do anything. Everyone make up their own mind and decision. I really have no skin in the game, even though we are selling this watch. But trust me, I'm not going to convince a Seiko collector not to like Seiko because they've been around for a while, right? I don't think they're going anywhere. So what watches should you get? Do you need to have a chronometer? I think I found a couple of pretty great ones that are COSC certified, and I'm actually pretty surprised that there are some brands that are offering COSC certified watches at the $1,000 price point. I think that's pretty unbelievable that some brands are really trying to do that. and guarantee for you that your watch is going to be accurate. Number 1, Tissot. Entry-level brand, but they've done some great things over time. They've started using some in-house movements, and what we have is a Tissot Ballad Powermatic 80, COSC certified, very simple watch, timeless. Nothing about this watch is necessarily going to jump at you and, make the watch seem unique, but for an everyday watch, a watch under the radar that's Goodwill made quality Swiss manufacturer watch, $975 for a chronometer watch that really doesn't appear to be giving up a whole lot besides some uniqueness factor, right? It looks kind of generic, but it's a Tissot name, and for $1,000 to get a chronometer, some people are under the impression that it costs hundreds of dollars to get a chronometer rating, just the 10 days that it takes to look over the watch. I mean, what does that have a value of? I think that is a pretty great deal if you're looking for chronometer. Next, we have a Christopher Ward. They have 2 watches that appear to be chronometer rated, and it looks like Christopher Ward actually gave away a chronometer certificate with the watch. I don't know if they're still doing that. It seems like they do, but seller beware of this. Reach out to them. And also, I haven't held a Christopher Ward in a while. People have been saying some really great things, but based on the specs, based on the photographs, I think the C65, which is kind of that British military, kind of the Dirty Dozen-esque style watch, looks pretty good, as well as the Dartmouth Diver watch. It's your run-of-the-mill dive watch with kind of an interesting modern take. That's $1,100. So between these 2 watches, once again, that $1,000, $1,100 price point chronometer rated watch. And lastly, we have a watch brand that's really trying to hit the market. I think they're trying to ride the coattails of the Mantas out there. They're kind of in that same category. We have a Formex. I think Federico might even know the Formex people. He seems to like them a whole lot, at least like the people. I think he's talked about them, maybe even shown you some of his watches from Federico Talks Watches. They have a Formex Essence, I believe still production or something comparable, for $986 for a chronometer, COSC certified chronometer. So once again, guys, if you do care about the timekeeping and you want that chronometer spec and you want it to be guaranteed, perhaps look at some of these other offerings. And if you want to, start spending a few $1,000s retail upwards, I think that it might make sense to get into something that does keep that timekeeping. If you need to have it from a brand that offers it, look at the Omegas of the worlds when you start getting past these suggestions that I've given you in that $1,000 price point. But what do you guys think about? First, leave in the comments. I want to hear from all the Seiko collectors. I want to hear all the Seiko people that say that their watch has never lost a second. Leave that below. But at the same time, I want to hear from the Seiko people that maybe have not experienced that. Let's do a little bit of an experiment, because I don't know. I've done similar things in the past, but leave in the comments below. I want to get a better feel for the comeback rate. I know I'm probably not going to come to any kind of real conclusion, but just to kind of tickle me here, leave in the comments any kind of Seiko service and timekeeping issues or pros that you have. Maybe you had it regulated by a local watchmaker. I want to hear about that in the comments below, because this is also going to help other people who are either collecting Seiko, adding Seiko to their collection, or maybe thinking about it, such as myself. And if there's a Seiko you recommend, leave it below, because I am genuinely considering adding one to my collection. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks. You've been chatting with John P. Ciao.